Emberleaf has hit our table. This is the next game from City of Games and designer Frank West. He also had a co-designer on this one, but this is the company that brought you Isle of Cats.
Race to the
Raft. Race to the Raft. And also, originally, City of Kings, which is probably got more in common with this one in terms of being a more meaty Euro type experience.
But it also does have cute animals.
It does have cute animals. It also has tile laying. So maybe this is the culmination of everything that they've been building towards. But all kidding aside, Frank has put a lot of effort into this one. He's been sitting on this for a while. We've had a chance to play it a couple times. So we're going to give you an idea of what you're doing in the game, but also how you're doing it, because the how you're doing it, and we'll save that for last, is the real meaty, thinky part of this game for sure.
We have the board set up in front of us, and out here is where we're going to actually have multiple different clearings where we can be building all these different buildings. So the main things we're doing in this game is we are moving from clearing to clearing. We can gather some of the resources. We can then use those resources to build buildings out into a clearing. And we can be attacking these creatures that are dangerous along the way.
Yeah, and when you build these buildings, you're also going to be homing some of these animals over on your player board. The player board is pretty robust. That is where a lot of the card play, or all of the card play, is going to happen. But across the top, you have 4 different animals. You've got rats, owls, rabbits, and frogs. And as you home them, you're going to take the leftmost and put them on the building that you just built.
Yep.
This is going to give you some bonuses as you trigger things along the way. But that is a big, big part of the game. A lot of the favor cards, which are sort of scoring opportunities and very important to your scoring in the game, are going to be tied to how you home animals, where you home animals, how many different types of buildings you've used, all sorts of different things in all of these different clearings, or maybe even if you just want to focus on one, because if you happen to close out a clearing by putting the last tile in there, you're going to get a trophy. There's a board over here that allows you to get up to 6 trophies. These are going to be the things that progress the game forward and ultimately trigger the end game.
Yep.
Trophies can also be gotten when this little marker goes all the way down through this track to this sign that says trophy and refresh.
And the way you're going to refresh them is what you're actually refreshing is those obstacles.
Yes.
So every time you clear one of these obstacles, it's going to go down one, and you're going to get to your choice of those 2 resources. And then as someone else clears something, it'll go down again. Keep clearing, keep going down until the last person who clears it is actually going to get a trophy, and they will get the top half of it, so maybe 5 points and 4 wood. Everyone else around the table still gets 1 wood. So they still get something.
Yes.
And then we get new dangerous creatures coming out on the board.
So if you may have already guessed, timing is going to be pretty important in this game, even at 2 players, but particularly at 3 and 4 players.
And
5, that's right. It plays 1 to 5. As you go down here and get these trophies, if you're the person who takes it down to the second to last space,
it's really tempting for the other person.
Someone else is bound to knock it down there so that they can get the top half of that trophy. So you're going to want to pay attention to what everyone else has going on and see what you have, what opportunities you have to make things happen sort of quickly. There are some triggers in this game where you might do a thing and cross a point on the score tracker that triggers yet another thing that you can do immediately if it's your turn. So you might be able to stack some things.
Yeah, and to be clear, these are also a little bit of a catch-up mechanic.
Yes.
Because not only are you going to do it on that turn, everyone around the board is also going to get a chance to do that thing. So it is pushing everyone along. But all the stuff we're doing on here, we've seen a lot.
Yes.
How are we actually doing it?
The how we're doing it starts off simple. So you're going to do one of 2 things as your core actions on your turn. You're either going to play a card onto your player board, or you're going to do what they call slide your cards. When you play a card, it's simply playing a card in any one of these at the beginning of the game, 6 slots. You have these 6 slots here, and then these 2 slots can be used ultimately, but you have to build these buildings. Because in addition to these sort of standard buildings we have with these costs, we have similar buildings over here that are going to cost a little bit more. They all take a little bit of honey, and honey is that sort of rarest of resources. But when you remove them, they're going to benefit your game. These 2 spots let you play more cards. These other spots will give you more tags, and we'll get to the tags in a second. But when you play a card, for instance, I could play Flint here. And by the way, our starting decks, which are basically your hands too. You're never drawing from a deck. You just have all your cards. They're different and they're unique. And it really kind of builds towards almost feeling like variable player powers, kind of, because I have very different cards than Emily does, so I'm going to have to do things a little bit differently to start with. With that said, we can acquire more heroes throughout the game.
I definitely can't just copy what you're doing because my cards
Yeah.
are not exactly the same. And
Exactly.
then you're going to do some things where I'm going to be like, how did you do that? What's the cool thing I have in return?
Right. You also don't necessarily want to copy or try to copy other players because that sequencing that we talked about,
so important.
you're just going to be maybe behind them. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to jump around to see if you can get out of sequence or do some different things so that you can jump on those opportunities when they rise. But when you play a card, you're going to look and there's a variety of different things that you've seen in a lot of, for instance, Tableau builders or other card Euros where something happens instantly. Something happens maybe when it slides, which we'll get to in a second. There may be ongoing abilities. They have some charge effects that allow you to, as a bonus action, use a resource to make something happen. All sorts of things. But when you play a card, you're just going to simply play it and do the things that you can do.
Yep.
In addition to that, like I said, there are some potential optional actions you can take. You can take these as many times as you want. One of those is, like I said, to charge a card. If you happen to have a card on your tableau in that instance that's chargeable, you can spend that resource to do the thing. The other thing, and we can't stress this enough, are these favor cards. The favor cards are going to have a display that gives you opportunities. For instance, this one says have at least 3 markets. So you have to have built and homed animals on at least 3 markets by the end of the game to score these 8 points. The game rewards players for trying to jump on these early. And the designer has stressed, even in the rule book, you don't want to mess around and not get these.
Yeah.
A lot of points at the end of the game can
Come
be
from
gathered
those.
from these cards, and up to, I think they said even like 50%.
50% of your score could come from
50%
them.
of your score
can see
could
that.
come from this, which is not insignificant. The other thing you can do on your turn as an option in whatever clearing you're in, if you still have one of these favor tokens, and these favor tokens are going to be one for each player in each clearing at the beginning of the game, you can remove that favor token from that clearing. It's out of the game.
You're promising a favor.
Yes,
right?
you're promising a this. Very thematic. And then you take one of these favors and you have that. Now, you might take a favor that says, have the most of this. Then you're communicating to all the other players at the table, oh,
I'm going for that.
I'm not going to let you have the most of that. Or I'm going to try to stand in your way. But there are some triggers here at the beginning of the game when you go through up sort of the first 13 points that will benefit you a little bit from really kind of like calling your shots early and taking those favors fast and furious.
Yes. So those are the 2 bonus things you can do. You can either charge something or you can take a favor. The other thing you can do instead of playing a card is you can slide.
Yes.
And this is where the fun comes in, right?
The meaty, head-melting fun.
So you played all these cards over different turns, and then I can say, I have enough on here, I want to slide. I'm going to go from my leftmost spot at the top, and this is going to be the first one that slides. If it has a green slide ability, I get to do that right away. And then I go to my next one. On the bottom, it slides. Once these are off my board, they come back to my hand, and I can play them again right away.
Yes.
But everything slides. So everything is going to go and slide. This has another slide ability. I'm going to get to do that. If something were dropping off and it had that blue drop off, I would also get to do that. If it had a slide and a drop off, I'd get to do both of those.
Yes.
So as you're like unlocking these spaces and doing a bunch of the sliding, you're doing a bunch of stuff at once, technically all in one action.
Yeah, but you'll learn very quickly that the positioning of the cards that you play while you're playing cards will have a significant impact on the rewarding aspect of what that slide is like, because there will be times when you play this where you slide something, say this build card off the end to build, but I don't have the resources yet.
Yes.
Now, if I'd played them in a different order so that the first cards that I slid had powers that let me gather maybe some of those resources, then this moved off or moved down or something like that, then I'd have the resources to take advantage of that build. So this is where the sort of brain melting aspect and the complexity comes, is like really trying to figure out how to best not only play your cards, but where to play them in order to make the most of them when you slide, and time that. And that is all something you have to consider when you're timing your play as it relates to everything you're doing out here with everyone else at the table.
Yeah.
So very quickly when we started playing, this is a very pleasant game, very simple in many respects. Like we said, there's a lot of things that you're used to out here. Playing a card, sliding a card, it's just 2 options on your turn. But it really becomes like, oh, wow, I've got to think about this. What card do I want to play? Do I want to slide? There'll come times where you're like, I filled up my board. I have to slide.
You have to slide. Maybe you didn't want to at that point.
Maybe you didn't want to. There's a lot of interesting things. So and a lot of it, too, is built around gathering those resources so you can build them. I have a card here called Flick, just to give you an idea of what the sliding is all about. This one doesn't do anything when I play it. So on the turn that I play that card, very little is going to happen unless I do maybe take a favor or something like that I wanted. Otherwise, I'm just playing that card and that's it. But when it slides, this one says spend 1 wood to gather 2 food. Then I could spend 1 food to gather 2 wood. So you can see if I put this over far to the right and then slid a few times, I'm able to have a little temporary, nice little engine where I can take wood to food, food to wood, and then by the end of it, have a lot of stuff to spend. That's not the most efficient thing to do, just to play that card and slide them down. I found that out for sure. But those are the kind of things you're going to be doing in order to try to gather things, build things. But you're trying to orchestrate it also. It's kind of happening
at the
simultaneously.
Same time. Yeah, and even though we start with different decks of 6 cards, throughout the game, we're going to get to draft 4 more. And so that timing becomes even more critical as well. Because if you see someone come out here and you're like, oh shoot, Brax, it looks really good for fighting. He has 2 fighting tags, and then I can spend a stone to attack once per sword that I have anywhere on my fellowship board. I'm going to take him right away. But David might see that too and say, actually, I want to make sure Emily doesn't get that card. So I'm going to home someone and be able to take it first. Every time you take one of these cards, either be from heroes or for favors, you're going to take that one and will also burn the ones to the rightmost. So these are cycling through very quickly.
Yeah, especially with higher player counts. Those really cycle. And the one thing Emily mentioned about that card in particular is the tags at the top. Those tags are going to be found on most cards. So once you played a lot of cards into your Tableau, you'll have a lot of little tags in the upper corner. Those will be things like food, wood, stone, probably never honey. I don't think there's any with honey. Honey is hard to get, so chase the honey whenever you can.
The food, wood, stone, swords, and walking. Feet.
So these are all the things that you're doing in the game, and a lot of the cards will say, do the thing according to how many of those tags you have. So if you want to collect a lot of stone and you use the one that says collect stone for every stone tag, and you look down and you have 1, it's not a great way to collect. Or if you need to move across the map and you want to move according to how many foot tags you have and you only have 1, you're not going to get there.
Which is even more about the timing, right?
Yes.
Because those tags are changing as the cards are coming on and being moved off. You might be like, oh, I was just about to do this big move action. I forgot.
That I just slid that off.
I just slid 2 people off that had all of my feet on it. And so now this is really not going anywhere. Really, it's all about like opportunities that you're seeing coming out on the cards, seeing out on the board, and your own board that you're trying to control as well as possible. But it's a lot of thinking going on at the same time.
Right, and you're doing all of this and out on the main board to score some points along the way. This is not all about the favorite cards at the end. So during the game, you're going to be scoring points largely as you build things. So when you build something, you're going to be creating things that they call neighborhoods. A neighborhood could be 1 tile with 1 of your animals on it. That's going to get you 1 point. If I put another tile next to a tile that had my animal on it, and it's a different type of building, then I'm creating a neighborhood. It's going to be 2 points. And if you can do sort of a diverse neighborhood of a bunch of different types of buildings all clumped together, you can kind of grow that over time to get 1, then 2, then 3, then 4 points. So they can be very fruitful points during the game. The only other thing that you're going to get points from during the game, I think,
is attacking.
Mainly is getting rid of these obstacles, and those are fairly straightforward. On your turn, you can do an attack action, and you can attack any of the obstacles that you're adjacent to. So right now, we're both here. We could attack this, 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 or this. We could not attack this one because this one would need to be removed first. The other thing about those obstacles is they prevent you from moving very far as well. So to move from here to here without an obstacle, it's just 1 foot. With 1, it takes an extra foot. So to move from here to here, it would take 1, 2, 3 feet. So that's another reason to get rid of those obstacles. But like I said, points is really the main reason why people are going to be removing those. At the end of the game is when you look at all those favors, and you're going to have, a maximum of 8?
Max of 8, yes.
So you can get them, like I said, when you remove these favor tokens. There's only 5 of those out here on the board, but then there are 3 spots along the top of your track.
Or across the board.
And on the board scoreboard. So you can get a few more, but like I said, you're only going to get 8 of those, so you want to make your decisions wisely. At the end of the game, those are the only things you're really adding to your current score to figure it out.
Oh, and one more thing, to add a little bit more complexity, on your game board as well, it's not just playing the cards and doing their ability, but if you have one like David's Flick, where it doesn't have an instant ability, you can play it in one of these 3 places that also has an ongoing thing. You can choose to do that instead of what's on the card. So it's great for things that only have like sliding abilities. If he plays it there, he's going to get to build one as his action. So even another reason to like upgrade these ones early on. And then not only do you have more spaces for your tableau, but they actually give you ongoing choices that you don't necessarily have to have on the card.
Yeah, in our game that we played, I'd acquired a lot of heroes that did a lot of attacking. So I was going out and trying to take out a lot of obstacles. And once I had them all on my board, I had a ton of swords. So I could take on some really big obstacles. And it should be noted, those flip at a certain point in the game. And that's how you refresh these throughout the game. And there are some really high point value ones out there.
13.
It costs 13 attack. And there are ways to get up to 13 attack. But one way to do it is to play a card that doesn't attack on this last space here to take advantage of all those swords one more time before you have to slide everything down.
Yes.
But yeah, there is a lot to this game. But it's very simple on one hand, what you're doing. It's a lot more complex in figuring out how you're getting those things done. But if you have any more questions at all about it, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and answer whatever we possibly can. Until next time, though, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.